everybody, and welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. Another day, another show. We're live today. Yesterday's pre-record went pretty good from what I saw, so thank you for continuing to support us even when we can't be here live as we're continuing our educations. But I'm Alec Burnett. Joining me yet again, back from Tuesday, Mike Wolfgang. Welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. Mike, how's it going?
What's up?
Not much.
Just going through classes, man,
Going through classes, I got Tuesday and Thursday, pretty laid back day for me. So I decided to go to the gym today, and man, I'm exhausted. I was playing basketball for like 2 hours. I'm burned. I
realize how out of shape we're getting.
Right? You don't realize it until you get back in the gym and you try and go hard and after like half an hour, you're sweating buckets. You're like, oh my God, I need to do this more. And then you don't want to go back because it hurts the next day.
I got two exercise classes, so we'll see how it goes.
Ooh.
So
doing a lot better than me. I took meditation. It's going to be an easy A here in my senior year. So I'm looking forward to it.
There you go. I told you, I got a weight training class, which I'm excited for, but a walking class. So it should be kind of easy-ish, kind of like the meditation class.
A walking class is an interesting class. I want to hear more about.
It's not just straight walking. It's there's going to be some other stuff. Frisbee football.
So they're going to teach you how to properly roll your foot as you walk, right?
That's key. That's key.
And how to get those arms pumping so you get the perfect timing on your strides.
Hey, I learned that.
You're going to be an expert walker by the end of the season.
I learned that in track junior, senior year. That stuff is important.
Yep.
As much as we're joking about it, but whatever.
Are they going to teach you how to text and walk at the same time too? Can they multitask it?
I hope so, because I plan on doing that, so I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get to this walking class. You're going to be like, all right, I'm really good at walking. Then you put the phone in your hand and then you just face plant.
That's all right.
Well, I don't think our viewers came here to listen to us talk about our classes. They came here to hear us talk about football. Day 3 of our college football discussion here on the show. Last 2 days have been great, Mike. We talked a lot of football yesterday. I'll give you the rundown. North Dakota at Nebraska, Georgia at Oregon, Utah at Florida, Duquesne at Youngstown State, TCU at Colorado, Rutgers at Boston College, Arizona at San Diego State, and Boise at Oregon State. Before we move into today, do you want to touch on any of those games I just mentioned?
Obviously, not anything specific, but I am excited about that Georgia-Oregon matchup. I don't know what level Oregon's on or what they're going to be this year, but I think it's still a matchup between two higher power teams. And obviously, I do want to mention our YSU Penguins play, starting off the season this weekend. So I'll be happy about it. Hopefully they have somewhat of a better year than the last couple, so it can't get too much worse. But I'm excited for that. And I'm just excited to watch any of those games, honestly.
I know you're excited to watch your Penn State Nittany Lions tonight. They go at it at 8. I see you got your jersey on. Who you repping today?
Saquon.
Good pick. I like it. I don't have any, I have one Ohio State jersey, and it's from 2002. Actually, I should probably wear it tomorrow since they're honoring the 2002 championship team before the game. But I got A.J. Hawk, who we've worn it a few times. He was a freshman, I think, in that game. He made a couple big tackles, though.
Oh, yeah. The good thing about Penn State's jersey is they don't have names, so you can just wear any of them. But I did get this one. This is a fake one, so his name is on the back. But yeah, that's the good thing about their jerseys.
I don't know. There's something classy though about getting that name on the back of it.
Oh, there is. And then college ones are hard to find too. Sometimes with names on them.
Well, especially the more recent ones with the issues with NIL stuff. But that's a conversation for another day. You said Oregon might not be at the same level of last year. What's your thoughts on Georgia though? Do you think they're going to be back?
Back as far as obviously, I don't think back as far as what they were last year because I think they were just next level dominant. But I think we talked about with predictions throughout the last couple weeks or the last couple months that they're going to be good. They're going to be a contender. They're going to be conversation in the SEC. But when you're talking about that level of dominance they were at last year, especially defensively, when they lost a lot defensively, not saying that like we talked about some other teams on Tuesday when I was on that, some guys are going to step in and fill. But they're still going to be a good team. I think both these teams, I think Oregon or Georgia's in a little bit higher category than Oregon. I think they're going to have a better year. But you might see some regression from both teams, I think.
Okay, fair enough. I think they're both taking steps back this year. But We've talked about Missouri Valley Football Conference a little bit here on the show throughout the week since YSU plays in that. North Dakota State, obviously the big name there, but we've talked North Dakota, Nebraska. Now we take it to South Dakota. The Coyotes going to take on the Kansas State Wildcats. Wildcats a heavy favorite going into this, as they should be. But I want to give this a chance to talk about K-State and where you think the Wildcats are going to be this season. They seem to be a decent team, and in my ranking or in my predictions, I have them as an 8-4 squad. This is a game I had them winning. They should win it. I don't really have any doubts about that. South Dakota is an all right team down in the Missouri Valley, but they're not going to compete with a good Big 12 team. But I kind of just wanted to talk about this Kansas State team. This gave us that opportunity to do it. Well, talking a little bit about that Missouri Valley. Kansas State team had a pretty good defense last year, only allowed 21 points against. However, it was their offense that struggled, which never is something we hear about in the Big 12. But this Big 12, it's been a big turnaround in terms of defense. And it seems just about every team went, all right, stop focusing on offense. We're going to become a defensive conference. And you look top down from Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. I mean, these are all becoming defensive built teams, especially with Oklahoma hiring Brett Venables.
And to highlight Kansas State too, obviously they had a solid year last year. Most of the guys are bringing back. They're going to bringing back an experienced team to start this year, or actually, for this whole year. And just I was looking up a quick game article on this game from the matchup. I mean, they still have Deuce Vaughn. That's their leading guy. That's their running back. One of 6, I think it says, 6 returning consensus All-Americans nationwide. So they got a lot of guys coming back, a lot of good faces on this team. I think it's a Kansas State team. A lot of guys, some ESPN writers I've seen them too, are expecting them, or at least picking them as a sleeper team this year that people aren't talking about, that they should be talking about. To do what, I don't know, but just a team that people should take note of.
Yeah, and again, I mean, you look at Deuce Vaughn, and he's been talked about as perhaps one of the best running backs in the nation, if not the best. I mean, 2 of the best running backs playing in this conference, and Deuce Vaughn and Bijan Robinson. So it's becoming ground and pound with some hard defenses. I really like what the Big 12's turning into, and I think the additions of a couple of teams in a few years are only going to add to that defensive aspects with the way that those teams are shaping out as well. But Kansas State, as you mentioned, a pretty good year last year, 8-5 all in all, 4-5 in conference play. But I think you look at the Big 12, and it was probably one of the most competitive Big 12s we've had in a while. Oklahoma wasn't just running away with things. There was a lot of competition, a lot of close teams. And outside of Kansas, you really didn't see a bad team, especially going down into bowl week. It was really a good Big 12 last year, and Kansas kind of got caught up in that. I think it wasn't for the fact that Kansas State was playing in a very competitive Big 12 last year. I think any other year that Kansas State team probably is 10-2.
Well, you talk about the defense too in the Big 12. Just from Kansas State, I mean, from 2020 or last year, they shaved off 11 total points from their points allowed per game from 2020. So that's a big step forward for their defense. Their defense also returning from this article too that 7 starters for their defense. So they're bringing a lot of guys back on both sides of the ball. So I understand why people are kind of looking at this team and saying take note of them, because they should be on paper scheduled to do something this year, and I kind of hope they do. I want to see them keep moving forward based off last year.
Keep pushing. I mean, it was a team last year, despite the fact Deuce Vaughn was amazing, they only ranked 64th in the nation in rushing yards, 96th in passing yards. So definitely some room for improvement. And when you talk about that many guys coming back, you should see a lot of improvement. And you look at the schedule, it's probably pretty favorable. South Dakota at home, Missouri at home, Tulane at home. So right there, 3 straight wins to open up the season at home. You're going to create some great momentum to go on the road for what will be a very hard test, one they will likely not win. But they go on the road to a top 10 Oklahoma, who's top 10 at the moment. Oklahoma could completely fall off with how much they lost in this last offseason. So that could be most likely a top 25 matchup come week 4. Texas Tech, they come back to home the next week, going back to the road to take on Iowa State, who I think will be good again this year. They stay on the road against TCU before coming back home to defend their home turf against Oklahoma State and Texas. Then they go on the road against Baylor, on the road at West Virginia, finish out at Kansas. So if we see another competitive Big 12 this year, there's a chance there at that 4-5 loss mark. But if we see a team like Iowa State kind of fall right back off, or Texas not be back, which they never are, but or Iowa State kind of fall down again. I don't know. Iowa State's one of those teams. They always look really good, but there's always something that goes wrong for them, and they always end up coming short in some category. So I think it'll be competitive no matter what. I don't know how Iowa State's going to do this year, but you might have 3 scheduled losses against Oklahoma State, and Baylor, and there's a likelihood if this K-State team is good that they pull an upset over one of those.
And there's always, minimum. There's always possibilities for trip-ups too. I mean, Oklahoma State's a team too. I think it's one you were talking about. West Virginia, I know they have not been what they've been here the last couple of years, but we'll see what happens to them tonight. But at least going into the matchup with Pitt tonight, that they're at least hoping to make some improvements this year. So we'll see how that is towards the end of the year. We know some teams kind of get fade at the end of the year, so that's something to look at too on their schedule. But to start out, you think they should be 3-0 going to the Oklahoma matchup. Anything could happen, but that's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a first real test, and it comes early to start conference play too.
Right, yeah. So we're both taking K-State, obviously, in this game. Next one up, the Army Black Knights taking on my Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina, playing just off the shores of Myrtle Beach there in Brooks Stadium. Conway, South Carolina is officially where it's called, but Mike, you know I love this Chanticleers team. However, Army's been given the favorite via ESPN's FPI matchup predictor, 54.8% towards the Army, and betting-wise, Coastal, a minus 2-point favorite to go into this. What are your thoughts going into this? Because it might be kind of one of those games that not Power 5, but might give us one of our best games of the week.
That 2-point spread kind of surprised me. That's pretty close for them, for Coastal Carolina at home too. Against what kind of year did Army have last year? I'm trying to think about it too.
Army was 9-4. They were really good last year at home. They were 5-1 at home. On the road, they were just 2-2. However, and they lost their bowl game.
So that kind of plays into that part where I'm kind of not shocked at that tight spread, but you would think it could have been a little bit more for Coastal Carolina after what they've been the last few years. But obviously, you like what they've been building. I know you've jumped on the bandwagon. Everybody loves it too. But I think it's another fun matchup too. Another one that, you know, not too many people are going to be talking about with headline some of the other ones on Saturdays. But this is one fun to watch at 7 o'clock game. I like this one. Yeah,
and you go back, and I think that COVID year kind of becomes the new point we look at teams. How have you been since those COVID years? Because it really seemed like a shell shock to the heart of college football, and teams like Penn State still haven't recovered from the down years those seasons caused. And for Army, you look at them since that 2020 season, they were 9-3 that year, undefeated at home, 1-2 on the road. That same season, Coastal Carolina, 11-1, undefeated at home and the road. And they only lost their bowl game that season. And I don't know if I can pull that one up. No, I can't. It won't let me for who they went up against, but they lost it. I think it was a pretty good one. Then in 2021, Coastal Carolina. Yeah, in COVID year.
Let me look. Go ahead.
2020, Coastal Carolina. But 2021, Coastal goes 11-2, 6-1 at home, 4-1 on the road. And Army puts up the 9-4 season. And you know, I think that's kind of where we have to start judging teams from, because we have completely different teams post-COVID than we did before COVID. It has been a real turnaround. It seems everywhere. Every team has been impacted for the most part. Even Clemson kind of have fallen off because of what happened during those years and how it impacted recruiting. And right now, 2022, this season, I think you're going to feel it the hardest of how teams were able to recruit, how people were able to go out and scout. It became a lot more, using places like YSN to scout people, because all of a sudden people weren't allowed to go to the game. So they had to go find them online. And that's how a lot of scouting happened too. It became a lot more digitalized. So I think especially this year, you're going to see the first of those recruits, or really the majority of those recruits. You've seen a few of them the last 2 seasons, but I feel like going into this one, this is when you're hitting that sophomore to junior class, and you're really going to see what we have out of how these teams recruiting did coming out of those years. So I'm interested to see how both Army and Coastal did. Army normally won't have to struggle to get recruits. Most people, who are going into the services will take Army or Navy and go that route and can play football while they're there. Connor Heater, a prime example out of Brookfield, going to Navy in the next coming years. But a team like Coastal, who was coming in new to the FBS. They haven't been here that long. I'm pretty sure, I think 2019 might have been their first year. I'm not 100% on that. But again, they were able to kind of jump right on things here in the FBS, and we'll see how they go after they lose their starting quarterback, who's been really great for the Chanticleers. And Jamie Chadwell is only going to stay so long with the record he's putting up for this team unless they get an invite to an FBS conference, to a Power 5 conference, which I think is potentially possible if they put up another 10-2 or 11-1 year. I think they could get an invite, maybe even over to the Mountain West or something of that sort. I know the Sun Belt kind of fits them a little better, but ACC could be a good potential place for them to go into as well. But I think you look at this game, and after the 2 seasons these two teams had, this is probably the highest profile non-top 25, non-Power 5 game.
I agree. And that bowl game too, they played Liberty in the Cure Bowl, and they lost that by 3 points. That was their only loss too that year.
Okay, so Coastal Carolina came up in 2017.
Oh, okay.
I believe.
Yeah.
They've been around a little longer than I thought.
I didn't even know until they bursted on the scene a couple years ago.
Right. No, I mean, I had never even heard of them. So, yeah, 2017, Jamie Chadwell was the head coach. Got fired after a 3-9 season. Joe Maglia took over in 2018. He went 5-7. He left. Chadwell came back, goes 5-7, then 11-1, and then 10-2 last season. So he's done pretty okay.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But Mike, who are you taking in this game? Because I think everyone knows the direction I'm going with this. Because I love my Chanticleers.
I think it's tough.
You're a Navy guy. There's no way you pick Army in this.
Well, yeah, but I think. My arguments for both teams are kind of the same, so I guess I'll just keep it simple, go with the home team. I think both teams are like kind of what we said with this matchup. It's kind of underrated for the profile it is. It's not top 25, but like you said, for that
and it's not even going to be on TV. It's on ESPN Plus.
Yeah, so you're not even going to get it unless you have that, but
which who does?
Not too many people. That's what our games are on too, YSU's. But
yeah.
I guess I'll just stay with the home team because I feel like both teams, like I said, are in that same kind of category. They both had good years last year. Army didn't play that well on the road, but I guess I'll kind of throw into here. I'm going to go take Carolina at home.
Yeah, to the point about Army not playing well on the road, well, they didn't. They did get a huge win over a future NFL quarterback at Liberty on the road, 31-16. They beat Malik Willis's squad while he was there. So that was a big win for him. Somehow Army lost the Army-Navy game last year. Still not sure how that happened with how different these two teams were. Army had a great season. Navy did not. Navy still won it. But Army, they also went in. They won their bowl game, 24-22 over an SEC opponent in Mizzou, who I know is not great. But still, they won their matchup. Coastal, their last time we saw them, they went up against NIU, Northern Illinois out of the MAC, 47-41 in their bowl game. So I think you come in and Army probably the more likely team to win. That's why the FPI matchup predictor has them favored. But I'm going here with the spread as well. I like Coastal Carolina. Give me my Chanticleers, first pick of the season for me.
You do have the flag, right? Or do you not get it yet?
I do have the flag. However, it's now displayed in my living room.
Oh, okay. I was going to say,
and I have to pick Coastal there, and I have them going undefeated. So,
oh yeah, you got to keep those picks in mind when we're making our game picks. Your predictions.
100%.
Yep.
I think I talked about Raging Cajuns at some point yesterday. I think I picked them. Coastal Carolina, obviously, I picked who else I got going undefeated? Alabama. No one in the Pac-12. I'm good there. Mountain West is clear. The MAC, I don't even know why I clicked on that one. Independents aren't going to give us anything. CUSA is not going to give us anything. Big Ten, I got Ohio State. Big 12, clean there. American, Cincinnati, and Clemson out of the ACC. So, got a couple teams I got to make my picks on, but most part I'm pretty clear, and I feel pretty good about all those still.
I don't know.
Cincinnati is going to be very hard to do, but
that is going to be tough.
But I'm holding out hope for Fickle and the fighting Fickles, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm taking Coastal in that one. Alabama taking on the Utah State Aggies. This is an obvious pick on who's winning it, but we haven't really gotten the chance to talk much about this Crimson Tide team here in the start of the season. We did rank them yesterday on the top 10 list. They came in as the number one team going into the season for us, despite both you and Matt putting them at number two. You guys had Georgia at number one. I had Georgia at 3 behind Alabama and Ohio State, same as the AP
Can I say why I did that?
Yeah, go for it.
Just simple fact. I know it's generic, but defending champs. I know I just talked about their probably the level of dominance they were on last year might regress, but there's going to be a really good team this year. That part of it too, and going back to their defending champs. They're champs until somebody knocks them off. Then I got Alabama.
I figured that would be your reasoning as to why, but I don't know. I kind of wanted to put champs up there, but I've said I think a little too much against them to put them at number one, despite all the things I've said about how I feel they're going to regress this year.
I think too that if people, that's fine to have them where you're at. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think if they're looking at that part of it too, I think there was questions last year in terms of their offense with Stetson Bennett, and he kind of proved some things wrong going on that run. We'll see what they can do this year. People are kind of talking about them, maybe take a step back on whatever side of the ball people are pointing at, but I think they kind of do well under pressure, Georgia.
They definitely do well under pressure. I mean, I think you saw that in the national championship game after they lose to Alabama in the SEC championship, got absolutely run over in that SEC championship by Alabama. Then you go into the national championship, get the rematch, and then Georgia comes out on top with really all the pressure on them. Like, man, is this great defense just going to get slaughtered by Bama twice in the same season? Yeah. And they ultimately kind of came out on top. I agree with you that they do perform well under pressure. That seems to be where they want to be. I'm still of the opinion, though, they lost so much, and there's only so many teams that we've seen be able to reload at that level. And with what Georgia has, I don't think they're one of those teams.
Fair. By the way, do you want
I want to talk about this.
I wasn't on yesterday.
What's that?
Did you post some rankings anywhere? Or?
Yes, they're up on the Casual Sports Report Twitter.
Okay, I haven't been on there, so I'll have to check it out. I wasn't going to make you run through it again.
Yeah, now Alabama coming in as the number one team. They had an epic run, though, in that last season. Really, I mean, the only losses, who did they lose to all in all? It was Georgia and Texas A&M, I believe. Yeah, A&M was their only loss in the regular season. They were really fantastic last season. Bryce Young obviously takes home the Heisman. He shouldn't have, but he did. Will Anderson is up for the Heisman as well as a defensive candidate. I don't know if we'll see him take it home. I think he's going to have an absolutely epic season, and he did last year, and he barely got any looks into that top 4. So I don't know what he's going to get this season. Seems our voters are a little bit more opened up to defensive players at least getting invited to New York. They won't give them the award, but they'll at least invite them, make them think they have a shot. But I think this Alabama team is going to be epic this year. I have a very strong feeling that we're going to be very upset with Alabama come January because they have a pretty easy schedule. So likelihood is undefeated. They do have Texas week 2 on the road in Texas. I don't know how that game's going to go for them. Or really, I should say, I don't know how that game's going to go for Texas. I know Alabama's going to show up to play, and they're probably going to win that game. They have road test at Arkansas. I'm not concerned about it. They have a rematch at home against Texas A&M. Not concerned about it. Then they have Ole Miss, and of course the Iron Bowl to finish out the year. But the likelihood is Alabama is back in the SEC championship. They're back in the college football playoff, and they're coming in undefeated.
I'm not saying they're going to lose. I do like that Tennessee matchup though. I like Tennessee this year as well.
I don't dislike Tennessee this year. But I'm kind of the opinion with this team. Same thing I am really with Texas. I won't believe it till you do it.
Yeah, but they've done more in Texas the last couple of years, though.
The last couple of years, yeah. But until a team can take it to Alabama and...
Oh, you're right. You're right.
And can win. I mean, no one... You look at this on this side of it. No one in the West, in the SEC West, is dethroning Alabama. No one. Arkansas, no. Auburn, no. LSU, no. Mississippi State, no. Ole Miss, no. Texas A&M, probably the most likely, but the answer is no. The East is a more competitive division this year. with Georgia maybe taking a step back. Kentucky with Will Levis. South Carolina seems to believe they can win a national title. I don't know why, but they do. Tennessee, obviously, like you're saying, a lot of people are really starting to think that they're going to turn this around soon. And I just read off, 4 teams out of a 7-team division. And not to mention, for some reason, Florida's getting looks to defend home against Utah. They're a favorite against a top 10 opponent on this Saturday for absolutely no reason. So you always got to watch out who's coming into play at the Swamp.
And that Texas A&M game, like you said, the most likely the hardest. I don't want to say hardest, but maybe the team has a chance to beat them. But they have them at home too. So Alabama never loses at home. So that's something else.
Yeah, Bryant-Denny Stadium doesn't see too many losses.
Right.
I wonder how many losses there have been at home for Nick Saban in his entire career at Alabama. Over under on 10.
I was going to set a little high, like 15, but
I was going to say 15, but I think that's a clear under.
I think that's obvious unders. I think 10's your kind of
because he's only been there at this point. What, 15 years?
Yeah, and like I don't know when the last time they lost at home. They didn't. That Texas A&M game last year was on the road, so that wasn't a home loss. I don't even know.
He's been the head coach there since 2007.
Yeah. What?
And he's won 10 games in every season since his first year, in which he went 7-6.
So maybe 15 is a good number to set it at.
Well, maybe. I mean, you say that, but then even if you go at that point, so what? 2008 to now, that's what? 15 seasons?
Yeah.
14 years, 15 seasons. 1 home loss a season, I don't think that gets it.
No,
even if all 6 losses in that first season came at home, I still don't think he's had enough since then to get him over 10.
Yeah,
that's
and they
insane.
have not had 1 loss. Yeah, you're right. 10's still good. Yeah, now I think about it that way, 10's still likely.
Yeah. So coming into this one against Utah State, who won their first game, got to keep that in mind. They beat the UConn Huskies barely. They were down 14-0 to start that game against who was rated one of the 10 worst teams in college football this year. UConn, Nebraska, Hawaii. Who else was on that list? Oh, I don't remember now. I think New Mexico State was on that list. But they were ranked one of the worst, and UConn almost pulled off that win against Utah State. And you look at the spread in this game, 41.5 points. I'm tempted to say I would take the over on that spread with coming into this game. If Jordan Love was still at Utah State, I think I would say take the under because I think their offense could perform a little better with him there. But that's years ago at this point. So Alabama, and I'm taking the over, man. I think they win by more than 42.
I'll agree with that. That's some other teams you want that, but it's Alabama against a team like this. Not saying Utah State's bad.
Well, I mean, what's the likely score of this game? 56-7, 50-something to 7 or 10.
Yeah.
So at that, you go, all right, good likelihood they at least are up by 41, 42 points, and I think they're right there. I mean, I'm guessing what people are thinking the final score of this game is going to be right around is 52-10, 59-13. 50-something to 1 or single digits or 2 scores for Utah State.
I mean, a lot of people like the under. It looks like
I don't have that bet up.
I got to pull it up from Caesar Sportsbook. So a lot of people 82% of people. I don't know what it's pulled out of, but 62. The under right now the line is set at 62. A lot of people like the under. Obviously, the money line 99%. Everybody's picking Ohio State just to win outright. And then the spreads. 31 minus 31, that's 64% on Alabama. That's a little bit, 31 points. Actually, now it's a 41.5. So yeah, that's still a lot of points. But for Alabama, it's a team that's Utah State. I'm not saying they stink, but against a team that's not Alabama's level, it's not out of the question to think that for Alabama.
Okay. Well, I mean, I like Alabama in that game, and I think it's going to be plus 42. Next game we're talking up here, Western Kentucky taking on Hawaii. I only bring this one up is because we saw a lot of struggles out of this Hilltopper squad in week 1 as they went against Austin Peay, and they only won it by 11 points. Now they go into Rainbow Warrior country, a team that was decimated by the transfer portal. They lost 25 players to the transfer portal after last season. Their head coach was fired because of it. They bring back a former quarterback, hero from the squad, I think 15 years ago, and they dropped their first game of the season against Vanderbilt 63-10. So I think Hilltopper is probably a pretty good favorite. They've been given the matchup predictor at 73.5%. The spread favors them at 16. But I think Hawaii has a shot to maybe keep that spread closer. I don't know if I would take that spread with how bad we saw Western Kentucky operate in game 1 against Austin Peay, who, while not being a bad team down in the FCS level, they're not a good team.
And we're not surprised out of, like we talked about last week with Western Kentucky, that's that their offense lost a lot. They lost a receiver that's now on my team now that I'm excited to have. Lost their offense is one of the better ones stat-wise in the country last year, and a lot of people didn't talk about it. And you struggle like that against, I knew, it was thoughtful that we're going to come out and struggle, but against like a team like Austin Peay, that's a little, you didn't expect that. So I think I got to go with Hawaii here.
I am going to take Western Kentucky because, as I said, losing 25 players to the transfer portal, and I don't think they got any back. I don't think that they're going to be able to get a win here in week 2. They were one of those teams rated as one of the 10 worst in college football for this coming season. I think there's a likelihood we see an 0-12 Rainbow Warrior squad, which sucks because I do like this team and I hope that they can pull something somewhere, but they lost, I think, too much. And with the spread favoring Western Kentucky at -16, we know at least Western Kentucky can score the ball. They put up 38 and they won. Hawaii put up 10 and they lost by 53 points. They put up good yardage, but it doesn't matter if you can't get into the end zone, and they allowed 600 yards to Vanderbilt. I think Western Kentucky, who had the best offense in America last year, is going to make this look bad.
We'll see. We
will. Florida State versus LSU, a Sunday matchup for the All-State Louisiana kickoff game, 7:30 on ABC on the 4th. Seems like an interesting matchup to put on this Sunday. It's down there in the Superdome. So LSU obviously probably being favored, but they're only been given a 3-point spread in this game to give them the favorite, despite the fact that ESPN's matchup predictor gives them a 72.5% chance to win. Mike, is the Seminoles back?
Possibly. I don't know. They played Duquesne week 1, so I don't know.
They did, but they played really well against Duquesne in that week 1.
Oh, they did, but I'm saying it's against Duquesne.
It's Duquesne, right?
Yeah. I don't really know what to expect out of either team this year, to be honest with you. Florida State, we've been saying the same thing every year. Maybe they could be rebounding. They don't. I hope they do this year, but we'll see. And with LSU, I don't know with the new coach and Brian Kelly how things are going to kind of tie apart. So there's a little bit of headlines and whatever you want to say concerns out of both teams. That's why I think this is going to be good, fun matchup because of that factor.
I think it's going to be a fun matchup for sure. Didn't LSU just get a transfer quarterback in?
Maybe.
Remember, because who was the quarterback last year? Miles Brennan? I think he announced he retired. So, yeah. As of August 13th, Miles Brennan was still there. It added Jaden Daniels. That's who they brought in.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I don't think Brian Kelly has yet to reveal a quarterback. Oh, 2 days after that, Miles Brennan retired. So, but Brian Kelly's keeping it a secret who is going to be the quarterback. But I think it's likelihood that it's Jaden Daniels. I don't remember where Jaden Daniels came from last year. But he came off of a 2,000-yard season, 10 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 710 rushing yards. Probably the direction they're going to go with this. He's got the most experience out of anybody that they bring in. Let's see, where did he play last year? He was with Arizona State.
That's right.
So, yeah, after what we saw out of Florida State in the first game, they took out some of their starters, I think, in the second half. I think I'm actually going to go LSU in this game. They've been given the spread, so I think I'm going to pick with the spread. I think, obviously, with that smaller one, I think I would take the -3 in that game as well. So I got Tigers winning this one against the Seminoles on Sunday.
I'll flip it.
Only Sunday matchup here this week. That's the only game on Sunday throughout all the sports for football.
Well, on TV, there's 2 other ones that we just talked about with Hawaii. That's on Sunday.
Oh, is that
and then there's an HBCU game with Florida A&M and Jackson State.
I didn't see that.
But anyway,
Hawaii's game officially. Oh, you know what? It's on Sunday because they have it scheduled as 12 a.m. for the game. It's on ESPN. They have it listed so that it's at 11:59, so it still counts as a Saturday game because it'll be Saturday in Hawaii when the game goes on.
I didn't even see the AM. I didn't pay attention to that, but the other one's still on Sunday though for 3:30 or 3 o'clock.
All of Hawaii's home games are played at 11:59 Eastern time. Because they're 6 hours back. So for them, it's a 6 p.m. game.
Yeah, that's true. No, with this game, I think I'm going to actually go against the spread for the first time, I think, this year and take Florida State.
All right.
I don't really have too much of a reason because, like I said, I feel like these teams, at least headline-wise, are kind of similar going into this year.
Right.
But neutral site game, I'll take Florida State. Even though it's probably a home game for LSU because they're all going to be there. But
right. And remember, that's where they won their national title.
Right.
FSU comes off a season. They were 5-7 last year, 4-4 in conference play in the ACC. LSU was 6-7, 3-5 in the SEC West. So both teams, they had their struggles last year, but should be a fun rebuilding game for both of them. I think you're going to see some really ugly mistakes from both squads. So take that as you will. Clemson Tigers will play on Monday against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, taking over the Monday Night Football broadcast from the NFL, who doesn't play this week. So it's a tune-up game for the NFL broadcasters. So this is obvious who's going to win it. It's not Georgia Tech. They lost their last 5 games of the year, maybe more. All I'm seeing, those their last 5. Clemson won their last 5. They ended the season really well. They won their bowl game against Iowa State, 20-13. Obviously, I had Clemson as an undefeated team this year. So obviously, I'm going to stick with Clemson in this game, obviously. But I kind of want to open this to how do we think Clemson's going to do this year? Because I have them going undefeated in part to how easy their schedule is. Number 1, Georgia Tech, second game of the year against Furman, then Louisiana Tech. Then they go on the road to take on Wake Forest, which is a game I would have considered for Wake Forest if they still had Sam Hartman, who got injured and will miss the entirety of the season. Then they take on the Wolfpack, which is probably the biggest in-conference game this season, the most likely team to pull that upset in the ACC this year against them. Then they're on the road at Boston College, at the Seminoles, to come back home against Syracuse, and then their hard road test on the season, they will head out to South Bend to take on Notre Dame. Then they come back home, Louisville, Miami, South Carolina. So I think it's a favorable schedule this year for Clemson. I think it's one that if they can finally kind of get back to where they were pre-COVID, I think they're going to be firing on all cylinders and have a team this year. They have some good players, and I think now that DJ Uiagalelei has been on this roster for 2 years as the starting guy, I think year 3 for him, I think he finally takes that big step.
So for I think what your original question was, out of what we expect from Clemson this year, I expect them to rebound. I don't think, though, this year it is an easy schedule. There are some tough, challenging ones sprinkled in between with, Notre Dame at the end. I know Miami's ranked 16 right now. I don't know if they will be at that point later in the year. Wake Forest and NC State, but I think they're going to go. I think it's possible they go undefeated, but I don't think they're going to be blowout type of games they were the last couple of years. I think some of these games are going to be grinded out tough games that they're going to have to go through hard-fought wins. So I think that's kind of my expectations here. I think they're going to be good, but it's going to be a different type of good compared to what they have been the last 5-6 years.
Right. Really, you can say before COVID. I mean, or I'll say post-Trevor Lawrence era. Yeah.
Right. And before that with Deshaun. But
yeah.
Because he did.
I just mean they haven't been the same since that since post-Trevor Lawrence.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, but
who was the
that's my
quarterback
thought.
before Deshaun Watson, though?
I don't even remember. I know Deshaun. I think he won their first national title. They've won 2, right?
Yeah, I think
I believe so. And then Trevor won 1. Trevor's been in like 2.
Taj Boyd was the last quarterback before Deshaun Watson.
I don't even remember.
Yeah, so, all right. Well, that brings us down, Mike. One more game to talk about here, and it's my game. Saved it for Thursday, considering it was the highest profile game. Not my bias on it. It's just the biggest game of the week, so
it's a fact.
Save it for the final day. It's a fact. It's the only top 5 matchup.
Exactly.
Should it be a top 5 matchup? Maybe not. Maybe. Who knows? We'll know after Saturday. I can assure you that. But Notre Dame's a team I personally had ranked at 8. You had them at 5. Matt had them at 4. I think they have a high ceiling and they have a potential of 3 losses because they put together a rough schedule. I mean, starting out on the road at Ohio State, good luck. They do have BYU, who is a top 25 team. They play at home in South Bend. Then they have likely the favorite to win the ACC this year in Clemson, who we've talked about already. And then they finish out the year in the Coliseum taking on USC. So right there, I mean, you look, 4 top 25 matchups, 3 potential losses, more than likely 2. They can probably find a way to win one of these 3. And if they're really good, if Marcus Freeman is that guy to take over from the winningest head coach in the history of Notre Dame and Brian Kelly, then we can see a really great season. But they also have UNC mixed in there. They have Boston College in there as well. They have easy games surrounding those hard ones, but they're throwing their young quarterback to the fire, and Tyler Buchner. He's a talented guy, can use both his arm and his legs, and I think that's going to hurt Ohio State a little bit, especially here in week 1 as they're getting Jim Knowles' new system underneath them in game time, in game speed. I think that's going to be the one factor that keeps Notre Dame close in this game is Ohio State still learning that new defensive system. But you look on the defensive side for Notre Dame, that's where they're the best. They have arguably the best defensive back group in the nation, the best secondary. They return a lot of talent on there. They do lose their top guy in Kyle Hamilton, who's now in the NFL. I believe it was a first-round draft pick as well. And I know I kind of broke down this team yesterday doing the top 10, and when we had them revealed on – where do we have them at, actually, officially? They were officially number 6 on our list. So with that number 6 ranking yesterday, I know I broke this team down and what I think of them. They have that really great secondary. I think their defensive line and linebacker unit this year still with a little bit to be desired. It's a good unit, but I don't know if it's necessarily the best part of their team. Really, you have to continue to look at that defensive secondary because, one, that's going to be the most difficult part going up against Ohio State is can that secondary stay together against Ohio State's offense? And that really is the only question for this team. So I'm looking here. Who else they have? I'm looking, pardon me, on 1 second.
They still have their running back, right?
Who
the heck was it? I can't remember his name now.
I don't remember. Okay, on the D-line, they do bring back Isaiah Foskey. I forgot about him. So Foskey's a top 10 prospect right now for the 2023 NFL draft. And their other 2 best players is their safety, Brandon Joseph, and their corner, Cam Hart. That's the defensive side. On the offense, their best player is Michael Meyer, their tight end, who's ranked as the number 2 tight end in the country going into the season. So they have a pretty good team. And on the offensive line, that middle 3 guys are going to be solid. They all return a lot of talent. They're all 4th and 5th year guys playing on that line. And they also got another guy prime for the 2023 NFL draft in Jarrett Patterson, their left guard. He got an Achilles tear last season. If he's coming out looking to make an impression, it's going to be a rough day for that interior unit of Ohio State's D-line, who last season got torn to shreds. And I won't push that away because last year, Ohio State's run defense was subpar. And if Notre Dame decides to go in and run the football, it's going to be a long day again for me as a Buckeye fan and other Buckeye fans in for that Buckeye defense. But no, Kyron Williams off to the Los Angeles Rams. So they're going to be looking really, it's Tyler Buchner's show. He takes over for Jack Cohn. He was the number 2 passer on the team last year, and he was the number 2 rusher last year with 336 yards. So it's going to be the Tyler Buchner show. Logan Diggs, I believe, is the new running back. He's a sophomore out of Louisiana. Last season got just 52 carries, 4.4 yards per carry, had along a 28, 3 touchdowns, and put around 230 up there on the season. So it's going to be hard for this team. There's so much rebuilding going on with this squad, and they lose their top wide receiver in Kevin Austin Jr. He's playing with Jacksonville. Michael Meyer, their tight end, is the best returning guy, and more than likely, Michael Meyer is going to be lining up against Tommy Eichenberg for most of the day. And all I've heard is Tommy Eichenberg has looked phenomenal in practice with Jim Knowles' new system. Same goes for the converting running back, Steele Chambers, who what I've heard out of training camps for Ohio State is Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers made this linebacker core look like it did 10 years ago with the way they have really taken over as the brain of the defense and their ability to recognize things. Jim Knowles has really put a lot of faith in this linebacker unit this season, led by those 2 guys. And secondary is supposed to be much more improved as well. And obviously with Larry Johnson on the line, you don't got to worry about those guys. They're going to step up this season, especially after he announced he won't be retiring anytime soon. I just think this Notre Dame team, having this as game 1, it's going to hurt them. I think they can keep it close. I don't have a problem with saying that they're going to keep it close, but 17.5-point spread favored for Ohio State in a top 5 matchup, that doesn't bode well for what people are thinking this game is going to go. Currently, the over-under is at 59 on OddsShark. 89% of people have taken the over in that game, which, I mean, you think both these teams are going to score 30 points. Pretty good likelihood that happens, or at least one scores 40, the other scores 20. I think that's probably the most likely of what happens. Most people are picking the spread against Ohio State. 68% of people have taken Notre Dame to cover that spread. However, I believe I saw outright more people have been picking Ohio State to win this game. Predicted scoreline via OnShark has Ohio State winning 46-33 over Notre Dame, which isn't bad of a pick. I'm going to give a score on this one, already, because I've kind of already made it with an article I've wrote this week for another company. I picked Ohio State 42-20 over Notre Dame, and I'm going to stick with that pick. It's truly how I believe this game will go. Ohio State, frankly, has too much offense, and I think Notre Dame, who is a defensive-minded team, is going to get disheartened with the lack of offense here in week 1. An offense, I think, that will improve and should improve as the season goes on, but I think at the moment, Tyler Buchner, he's going to, 1, have to make his first start, 2, do it against Ohio State, 3, do it in Columbus, and 4, he's got to learn all this on the fly and get that game time decision-making out there against one of the best teams in America. I think the hill is too big to climb for week 1 for Notre Dame.
Again, I always want to, when I make my picks, I always want to try to throw in that anything is possible, because we saw last year. I had the same thought last year when I know it wasn't the first game of the year, but I kind of had that mindset with Oregon coming into Columbus, and Oregon somehow pulled it out. And I know it was part of what you were kind of saying, that Ohio State's defense kind of gave that game away at 35 points at home. But I agree with you, though. I think it's not to say Notre Dame's not going to have a good year. I still think they're going to have a good year. But I think it's a hard game to start out with. Any game you play in Ohio State, all jokes aside, it's going to be hard. It's a hard place to play. They don't. We just talked about Alabama at home. Ohio State doesn't lose that much at home either. So,
I mean, 89%. Granted, they have lost their last 2 highest profile games in the shoe. Out of conference games with Oregon and Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's worth noting when you're talking about this. Yeah. But I think,
not to mention, before that, they lost to Virginia Tech at home too. Early season at home has not boded well for Ohio State.
I feel like this one's gonna be different though. I don't think that, especially what you're talking about, because a large part of the game last year against Oregon was because they lost, was because they had defensive problems.
Defense sucks. But also keep in mind this: that was C.J. Stroud's second game as a quarterback in college football as well, and Ohio State lost. That's why I'm kind of going, well, Tyler Buchner is not Stroud. And Stroud actually looked semi-decent. And if you also remember back to last year, not making excuses because we lost, I took it how it was. We lost, and I think I even said on the show after it, I took it right on the chin. But C.J. Stroud was playing hurt. And if you remember, after he sat out the Akron game and tended to that shoulder injury that they at least claimed he was dealing with for a couple weeks, he came back and he was 10 times better than when he left after just that 1 week off. So you always have to you always retrospectively think, what would have been different if C.J. Stroud had a little bit more underneath him, if he had been able to take that break. And say if that Oregon game comes week 6 rather than week 2, would that outcome have been any different? As a Buckeye fan, I'd like to say yes. As an analyst, though, I think I can only say I don't know, because I think you would see a completely different two teams if that game happens week 6 rather than week 2. But I think Buckner's going up against way too much in week 1. It's just, you can only win so many battles here in college football, and you can only overcome the odds so many times. And I think one of the great things about this matchup, it's not a team that's met a lot of time, but as a Buckeye fan, I feel like there's almost not a huge one, but a small unspoken rivalry between these two teams, because for the last 50 years, recruiting in this area, it's more of a recruiting rivalry than an on-field rivalry. But the biggest recruiters in the region for the last 50 years, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan. They've dominated Midwest recruiting for over the last 50 years. So I think you kind of have that unspoken rivalry between them. I know it's probably felt more by the coaches than the players, but all those players had to experience, at least the ones that came out of this Midwest region, getting chased by both Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, more recently Penn State and Pitt. But, they all talk to these guys. All these players should know both coaches. Well, maybe Marcus Freeman not as much, considering he's newer, but everyone should kind of have some sort of relationship, and there's going to be some sort of chemistry on the field in this game between these two teams.
And you keep in mind, too, that just in this area, the fan bases, too. A lot of it's Ohio State. A lot of it's Notre Dame. That's the majority of the fan base here. We got, not as much, but you got Penn State people sprinkled in. Those are the three teams in this area, big profile schools. I think from that part of it makes it a rivalry, too, because I know it doesn't have anything to do with really the players. They don't sense that. But when you do sense it, when you're in the crowd and a lot of people are going at it, it's a tough environment. I agree with that part. It's a little bit of sneaky one. We just don't see it happen too much.
I will put this out there. I know it's Ohio State season opener, but because of the large Notre Dame fan base in Ohio, I think there's going to be a lot of green in Columbus too.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to look like Christmas in the horseshoe.
And they do travel too. Notre Dame does travel.
They do. And I mean, they don't really have to travel that far. You're talking about two stadiums that aren't that far away. I think it's 6 hours between the two. It's really not that bad.
Something like that.
It's not great. Might only be 5. I don't remember. I think 5 sounds good. To go from one or the other. 5.5. Yeah. Good. I'll go there. But final topic here on Thursday. I'm taking Ohio State. Mike, who are you taking officially here?
It was hard last year with the Oregon game, because I didn't think they were going to do it on the road, but they did. I'm not going to fall for it twice. I have to go Ohio State at home to open the season. It's a hard game for Notre Dame to start out with. All jokes aside, it is. It's tough, and I don't think they have what it takes to keep up with Ohio State's offense.
All right, and finally here, before the season gets started tonight, I know we had week 0, but none of those teams were making the playoff anyway. But week 1, you have at least a chance for your team here, Mike, and Penn State, to start their run to another college, or to their first college football playoff. I want to get your thoughts. Who are your 4 teams in for the college football playoff this year before anybody's chances go out the window tonight?
I think number 1's given is Alabama. We talked about that. I was high on the Clemson. I think I'm going to throw them back in there with them coming back this year. I'm trying to be truthful and not, kind of let emotions come out, but I'm not going to put Penn State in, just so everybody knows, because I don't think they're going to. I guess that means I got to throw Ohio State or Michigan in there. I think it's going to be Ohio State, because I don't think they're going to lose at home to Michigan this year. So I guess I'll go those 3.
Who's your wild card then?
That's what I'm trying to think of. I'll go Utah.
Utah. I like it. I don't think the Pac-12 gets any love, though, this year. So I got Alabama, I got Ohio State, and I got Clemson as well. I think they're all probably back in it. Notre Dame really becomes the flip-flop. Notre Dame can put a shell shock in that if they beat both Ohio State and Clemson. Because keep in mind, Ohio State and Clemson could lose their game against Notre Dame, win out the rest of them, and Clemson, Notre Dame, and Ohio State are all in still.
Right.
Notre Dame is probably a 2-ranked team ahead of them with Clemson 3, Ohio State 4. Potentially, those two flip-flop. Or maybe even Notre Dame number 1. They probably have the best strength of schedule at that point and best quality of wins if they beat 2 other top 4 teams. So you have that opportunity as well. So that being said, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and my 4 team. I don't love the Pac-12 this year. I think there's too much going on. I honestly don't think the SEC gets 2 this year. I feel like if Georgia steps back the way I think they do, I don't think they get it in. That leaves me somebody from the Big 12, and
that's tough too.
I had Iowa State as the best team this season. Again, another team Notre Dame has to, or Clemson has, one of those two has to play. I think Clemson. Somebody plays Iowa State now. I don't remember.
Clemson does not.
My God, we just talked about it today. Who plays Iowa State?
Notre Dame doesn't either. Yeah, neither of them do.
Kansas State does.
Yeah.
You look at Iowa State's schedule. That's favorable. I got Iowa State. I'll have Iowa State as my 4th team in. So I got Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, Iowa State. Number 1 team, I think it'll be Bama because I think they'll go undefeated. They probably go coast to coast on this number 1 spot. Number 2, since they're already number 2 in the rankings, I'll keep Ohio State there because I don't expect them. I don't want them to lose. I don't expect them to either. Number 3, I'll put Clemson because I think they'll have the better quality win. Number 4, Iowa State. I'll have Iowa State lose to Alabama that first round. Ohio State will beat Clemson because I don't like seeing Clemson win, especially not against my Buckeyes. And a national championship game repeats back to the 2021 national title game. Alabama dogged on Ohio State now, and I'll admit it. They absolutely ripped us a new one. It was bad. But I think you have to find a way to set up a matchup between the 2 best quarterbacks in college football this season in Stroud and Bryce Young. But in that matchup, this is where my bias is coming out because I want to say Ohio State, but you really have to look at the way things went the last time they played. And I know Alabama doesn't quite have the weaponry they did that year, but I really need to see on how Ohio State's defense is going to play this season. I mean, if Ohio State's defense is better, I got Ohio State. If Ohio State's defense sucks again this year, I got Alabama.
I'm going to go Alabama with number 1, Ohio State 2. I'm actually going to put Utah at 3 because I think their schedules. I think Clemson's schedule is about the same, if not maybe weaker. I know the Pac-12 is not great, but there's some other teams in Pac-12. So, and then I'll put Clemson at 4. So that leaves. Yeah, so
Utah will get the push if USC is good, though, too.
Right, that too, and Oregon as well. But I can still get the Ohio State-Alabama matchup, and I still got to pick Alabama to win it. They're just deadly.
They are. They're a very hard team, and I'll admit it as a Buckeye fan. If Ohio State isn't perfect all around, they're not beating Alabama. That's how we beat them back in the first ever college football playoff, and we lost because we didn't have anything there. But that's going to do it here for the college football edition of the Casual Sports Podcast. We bring it local tomorrow. Don't miss out. Myself and Matt Morrison will be back. Maybe a couple guests. You'll find out. Power Hour up next on your Sports